I've made videos talking about how cheap the Pokemon trading card game is to play in, but no one ever really talks about the aspects of traveling to a major Pokemon tournament or card game tournament in general. Like, how expensive is it to fly somewhere, get a hotel, food for a weekend? That's going to add up pretty quickly. My name is Rahul Reddy, and today we're going to be talking about how expensive it is to travel to a Pokemon tournament and why this may be happening as we continue to play the game. Where I think the trajectory of things are going to be going. I am an economics major, so it is very interesting to me when I look at trends and analysis, coming down to things like Pokemon, that is a hobby and should be treated as a hobby for all extents and purposes. It should not be a job for anyone besides like maybe 10 people in the world. So you guys should enjoy that as well. The idea came to me when I was talking to one of my locals, Clifton Dalgard, on Twitter, Panomics. He said, "Is it me or are indie hotels wild for regional weekend?" And to that, I did a little bit of research, just like a quick cursory search on Google to see, what's going on in Indianapolis on the weekend of May 5th. And I came up with the answer that there's a couple of college graduations, which colleges that are inside the city or close proximity to the city, which are going to eat up some of the hotel rooms. And there's a big half marathon, which will eat up a lot of things as well. Like, you have to keep in mind, while Pokemon is a couple thousand people, there are other events that will happen at tournaments that will eat up a lot of people. And then the next line I said is that the reality of the situation is that Pokemon is a year-round game that will clash inevitably with events throughout the season, and bigger cities that we end up will have a likelihood of expenses going up to exist, basically. I worded that very poorly, but you guys get the idea. Basically, the bigger cities we go to accommodate our growing player base will probably increase in a clash in space with other big events that are happening, therefore causing a clash for hotels. That can't really, like, hotels can't be built overnight, so they can't really accommodate for the growth in all of these other hobbies and other things that are happening. People have rediscovered their interests over COVID for a lot of things. So, like, let's just say Pokemon and a giant MLM convention could be happening in the same weekend in a certain Columbus downtown hall. What's going to happen when you have thousands of people clashing for both of these things and vying for the same set of hotels? People are going to have to go a little bit further out. People are going to have to figure out things in that general. Clifton then responded, "Yes, it is inevitable, still a challenge to overcome." In my opinion, I responded with, "I think that is a challenge that really can't be overcome because we're going to be competing with a lot of other big conventions at big cities, and you either go to a big city where it's easier to travel to and get to, or you offset the cost by going to a city in the middle of nowhere like Peoria, Illinois, a city that we have had on our circuit for the last couple of years and has been probably one of the hardest regional locations to get to. Fort Wayne, Indiana, like some of these obscure locations, Fresno, California, they're known by the people who live near there and around there, but for people who are flying in from maybe across the country or a different state, it is a nightmare to travel to and adds up very quickly cost-wise." Clifton then tweeted out a picture of a Town Place Hotel Suites in Indiana for the weekend as a meme, I feel like, but I decided to kind of dig a little bit deeper and look at the accommodations myself. It looks like hotels, as they generally go, from Friday to Monday. I think that's a generous offer. I think Friday to Sunday is where a lot of people will stay. But Friday to Monday is just if you have a flight Monday morning, maybe you have a flight Sunday night. Let's just shift it to Sunday night. You can see that a lot of the hotels are about 281 if you walk a little bit further, 295. 374. So it is a pricey weekend to go to Indianapolis, especially if you are traveling solo. Even if you have a group of people, it's still going to add up quite a bit. The Indianapolis Marriott downtown, which looks like it is connected to the convention center or has a skywalk, comes out to $414 a night. Now, is that for a queen bed, one individual queen bed, or is it for like a room of two queen beds? Who knows? I'm not going to click on that and figure that out right now. That's for you people to figure out. This is where I'm going to plug myself a little bit too while we dive into the statistics and analysis portion of this video, where I talk about average, like, convention center size, the bigger ones where we're going to go potentially, the average cost of travel, comparison behind a lot of stuff in general. So a couple years ago, I made a video when COVID ended that how to travel smart and cheap to Pokemon events. It's right here. You guys should check that out. It is where I talk about how to use credit card points and hacks. Like, it's not like hacks, I guess, but just search on VPN clients when you're looking for VPN or incognito windows, when you're looking sales for airlines. If you're going to stay loyal to an airline, you're going to get more across the board. But if you're trying to travel the cheapest, you don't necessarily have to stay loyal to an airline. You can go on Spirit for all we care. Just, you got to get there and play some Pokemon. That's all that matters. And then more recently, I was the number one ranked Pokemon TCG player in the world for a short period of time. It is dwindled. I'm like 16th now. But I also talked about in this video extensively how I use travel, my cost of the season, why I'm spending a little bit more than other players are, but it's not that expensive to get a World Championship invite if you play your cards correctly. No pun intended. So that's my plug. Go check those videos out. Please like and subscribe as well. This helps out the channel quite a bit. I love talking about numbers, so let me know your experiences in the comments below as well with the season. Why things are a little bit more expensive for you potentially, or can you use this information to good use next year potentially to chase a World Championship invite? I do understand that the World Championships are in Honolulu, Hawaii this year, so that has deterred a lot of players from chasing it because Honolulu is quite expensive in the summer. We're heading to Honolulu. Flights are no less than $700 to $1,000 to get to Honolulu, Hawaii, and hotels are going to be pretty expensive as well as the cost of food. So let's jump into convention centers. The first thing I want to talk about is the size of convention centers across the United States. This video is primarily, I guess, geared for the United States because I don't really know too much about Europe. In regard to this, I don't live in Europe. I don't frequent there far enough. So this is like purely based in the US for my purposes. If you're from a different region or country, please let me know in the comments below if you have any insight on your location. But you can see some of these bigger convention centers across the board. These are the top 10, I think, biggest convention centers in the country. We have Chicago, which is McCormick Place, the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida, which already hosts a regional championship with some of the biggest exhibition space in the country. The Las Vegas, Nevada one. Atlanta, Georgia has one. New York City has one as well. We're heading to the New Orleans Memorial Convention Center for the North American International Championship. So we are heading to the 6th largest convention center from where we used to go in Columbus the last couple of years. So that's already a huge step up, and Pokemon is already working towards that. St. Louis, America's Center. We have San Diego Convention Center, which we've already been to as well. Huntington Palace, or Place, sorry. I don't know why I said it like that. We have the Walter E. Washington Convention Center, which has hosted the 2014 and 2019 World Championships, yada yada, etc., etc. We can just go down the list a little bit. Pennsylvania has hosted a World Championship, a regional championship as well. We've headed to the Greater Columbus Convention Center a couple times ourselves. So you can see some of these locations here have hosted regionals. You see the Anaheim Convention Center, David L. Lawrence. We've been there as well. Indiana is hosting a regionals back-to-back years, and we've had nationals there in the past. We've been to Baltimore for a regionals as well. Like, you can see kind of that we have hit some of the big benchmarks, and these are in major cities that are easily accessible. Now, where does the, I guess, like, buck stop? Like, how do you travel to some of these locations? Like, maybe you start heading to Madison, Wisconsin, which is a little bit more expensive to get to just because it's a little bit out of the way. Like, there's no great flights to Madison, Wisconsin. You're going to probably have to fly through Chicago and drive, or you have to fly directly into Madison, but that's going to be a layover and a little bit of more of an expensive flight. The smaller the airport, the more expensive it'll be. Let's just page down a couple times real quick so where we take us. Timonium, Maryland. I don't even know where that is, and I live in Virginia. So, like, I'm right here next to Maryland, and I can't even tell you where that is. We've been to the Oaks, PA Convention Center as well. Like, some of these locations are just in the middle of nowhere comparatively, even though they're in a major state, a major city area, and they don't have great airports to get to. So that is one thing to note about convention centers. And if you guys are complaining about the size or whatever, you can see that we're using a lot of these big ones already. We just have to rent bigger halls, and we have to continue to accommodate. So maybe next year we see a Chicago regionals. Maybe next year we see a Las Vegas one. That might cause problems for other reasons because some of you out there are naughty. We might head to New York or Atlanta. That'd be awesome. All these are very easily accessible cities. So next I want to talk about the average cost of airfare from major airports. These are the 10 busiest airports in the United States. You have LAX averaging about $440 a flight, Chicago O'Hare $390, Denver $346, Atlanta $410, Newark $425, Boston $403, Seattle $420, Orlando $272, Dallas $440, and Phoenix $385. This is just the average cost of flights anywhere, so it could be obviously cheaper or more expensive. And I think if you're traveling out of Los Angeles to the Midwest or the East Coast, it's very expensive, and vice versa if you're heading from the East to the West. Now, take that into consideration that you are going to smaller airports and more difficult locations. It gets more and more expensive. This is a chart about average airfare cost across the course of 4 years, not through 2023. So this is just a study through 2022. And you can see that it hasn't really gone up a ton, but in 2020, when COVID happened, cost of flying kind of just dropped because no one was actually flying. And until we came back in 2022, realistically, like, the wanderlust hadn't really picked up yet, and now people are back, and there are less airline routes that are flying. Therefore, it makes it more expensive for people to travel. These are all some of the most ridiculous things. These are some of the most affordable airports because they probably have very few routes where they fly to. So maybe Provo, Utah only flies to a few cities around it. like Salt Lake or Denver before it branches out to a bigger airport. So flying from Provo to Denver is probably only a small 2x2 configuration, like small jet. Like same with Stockton, San Bernardino. Like these are not like airports that fly international or whatever. So Pokemon is a year-round game, like I talked about, and January and February are the least expensive months of the year to fly, but December is the holiday season. So any regionals that fall into the November, December range, it's probably going to be more expensive just because it falls into that holiday season, and your travel may clash with other people heading home for the holidays or their own holiday vacation. Summer, August is a little bit cheaper than June or July because June and July will have quite a bit of summer travel because that's when everyone's really on vacation. But August, people are kind of dialing it back and getting back into the groove of things and life. So just a quick comparison of flight stuff. And then here I wanted to talk about the average cost of hotels in a lot of cities. And this obviously varies from time to time, depending on like the time of year, other events happening, whatever. And if you know you're heading to a regionals, a lot of the time hotels are non-refundable. So I would encourage that if you're like, okay, I want to go to Nashville regionals, that's not a real regionals, but like let's say I want to go to Knoxville regionals, and you've decided that on your like early checklist when the season drops with dates, just book a hotel. Just book a tentative hotel, have a room set aside for you. You don't want to be scrambling like people are now for Indianapolis 2 months out, where everyone else who's now registered is competing and trying to figure out to get these last couple slots. But some of these events, like the half marathon or college graduations, these have been set in stone for a full year, even before Pokemon releases their own schedule. So some of these hotels and stuff have already been taken. And if you're going to be late to the punch, like if you're going to get this close to the punch when there are other events happening, you are late. It's as simple as that. You are late to the ball. And you kind of lose your right to complain when we've had our dates for regionals for, I think at this point, 6 or 7 months. Like we've had our information for 7 full months. I personally went ahead and booked almost all of my hotels ahead of time when the schedule dropped. The few that I haven't booked, I kind of got punished and I have to walk a little bit further to save like $50 to $60 a night. But I don't mind walking. I am a physically fit human being. Not to discourage people who don't like walking, but if you want the convenience of being close to the convention center, you got to go early. You got to book early. So you can see some of these cities where the hotel near the city center, basically I just typed in downtowns, like so big cities with downtowns. You can get pretty affordable hotels across the board, honestly. So you can see why Indianapolis this weekend, like the 185 doesn't hold true. Like this weekend you can see, or the weekend of the regionals, you can see that 380, 350 to like 400 is going to be the average per night. But that doesn't always hold true, right? Like Los Angeles regionals is coming up. If you know you're heading there already, you should be booking tickets for this that are refundable. Usually cost a couple bucks extra a night, but you just have the safety of being refundable. So just a quick tangent about hotels in general and to help you guys out. How much? So this is the principle of economics. This is one of the first things they teach you. It's called the Big Mac Index. Now, what is the Big Mac Index? I don't want to give you guys an economics lesson across the board, but the Big Mac Index is just how much a Big Mac costs in different places in the world, the country, whatever. And that is a gauge of how much other things will also cost, because the Big Mac is a good staple indicator of if a Big Mac is $2 in New York and it's $6 in California, you can expect things to be about 3 times the price of from New York to California. So when you're traveling to a certain location, especially when we're heading to these downtowns, metropolitan areas, cities are not cheap. When you head to some place like California for regionals, you should fully expect that your burger that you might have gotten in Alabama for $3.99 is not going to be $5.11, not including taxes. Each state has different tax rates as well. So this is something very important to note as you travel from place to place. Like maybe Tennessee is a little bit more expensive when we go there for regionals, but if we have like a New York regionals, it's going to be expensive. Maybe when we head to Connecticut for regionals, potentially it's going to be expensive. But let's say we head to South Dakota, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than you would have planned for. Maybe the travel is a little bit more expensive to get to these places because it's not a hub, but it is cheaper in the long run, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just a indicator of inflation and the cost of the external cost of things when you're at a tournament. Now, I understand that people just don't eat McDonald's 3 times a day when they're at a tournament. Like, please don't. That's not healthy for you. But you're going to eat food. Like, you got to eat food to survive when you're there. Let's say you land Friday at like a little bit after. Let's say you land Friday for dinner. You go get dinner on Friday. You've got Saturday, all of Saturday to eat. You've got Sunday morning. And then maybe you have a Sunday evening flight out. That's a minimum of 5, maybe 6 meals that you have to accommodate for during a tournament. And yes, you're paying extra in a convention center. So this are all factors that account into what Pokemon is going to be able to do. Some recently we've seen that Pokemon organizers are working together with local food trucks or restaurants to try to set up options for people to have during lunch breaks. But I get like again like the lines are ridiculous. There's thousands of people trying to get the same like 4 food trucks, so it's a little bit ridiculous across the board. So just wanted to look at the regional schedule this year and give you my honest assessment of cheap, expensive, whatever from my perspective. I'm gonna do like a season recap at the end of the year, just kind of roasting all the regionals, and you guys can watch that later on. Like I want to give an honest opinion of all the regionals I've been to, how much it costs to get there, like the ease of getting there, the cost of stuff, like the location, whatever, how much I enjoyed each venue, because I think it's like a great honest like customer review basically. Like I'm a customer of the Pokemon Company by playing in their tournaments. Pittsburgh was cheap, easy to fly to for a lot of people. Obviously, I think the cost for that weekend, sorry, came in because it was the opening weekend for the Steelers. So a home game colliding with a Sunday tournament made it expensive for a lot of people for hotels, but otherwise it was like fine. Peoria is a nightmare to get to. If you don't fly into Chicago and have someone drive you 3 hours, you are SOL, man. You're just stuck. You're doomed. It's very expensive. You probably add like $300 per flight there, but in Peoria, it's pretty relatively cheap across the board. Food options were terrible, but it is what it is. Sacramento was a little bit expensive to get to because I'm east to west, but anything east to west is going to be expensive for me, so that's just a general statement. Toronto, the area itself is a little bit expensive hotel-wise. Like you got to go a little bit far to get hotels, but getting to Toronto itself is pretty easy for me. I am East Coast, so going east up to east is pretty easy, but if you're going west to east and have to cross a country border, it could get expensive. I did not go to San Antonio, so I can't speak on it, but I heard that it was pretty easy to get to, pretty relatively easy airports to fly into, whatever. Portland is a little bit expensive for a lot of people, including people living in Midwest and East, because it is just one of those locations that it's not Seattle, you know, it's not like Seattle. You're not heading to Washington. Portland is a little bit of a smaller airport. No, actually, it's pretty big. I don't know why it's so expensive. It's just usually one of the more expensive ones. Charlotte was super easily accessible to a lot of people, just because it's not like in the middle of nowhere. Like Charlotte is like a very big hub for airports. I think it's an airport hub in general. So a lot of airlines will fly in. Any city that is a major airport hub or airline hub will have some airline that will get you there for a reasonable price because flights have to go back through there, so they want to channel flights through. Knoxville is a little bit tough for a lot of people, not for me. It's easy for me to get to because I live at a hub city, so I live in DC area, so I can have 3 different airports that will get me there potentially. But for a lot of people, Knoxville is very difficult to get to, cost-wise and time of flying-wise. It's a very small airport, so it is a little bit of a problem. Vancouver is a great one to get to. It's very expensive for me, but it is a lot of fun and very easily accessible from a lot of major cities. But the expense is quite large to get to Vancouver because you are flying quite a bit away from the East Coast. Orlando is probably one of the cheapest to get to for almost anyone. Like Orlando has flights going in and out all the time because of Disney. Kind of a huge perk for Orlando. It just kind of sucks that you're gonna have kids on your flight at some point there or away, and not the good kind of kids, like the ones that are like Disney kids, you know. And then Indiana, I've heard is pretty easy to get to for people too, but hotels we talked about, and LA should be relatively easy as well. Europe, I don't know Europe as well, right? So like I can't really speak on that, but that's just my NA analysis. So I don't really know what the point of this video was. I just kind of wanted to talk because I like talking. And if you guys are planning on playing Pokemon next year or even traveling or going to places, you gotta keep in mind that Pokemon is a year-round game. We have a schedule similar to something like the NFL or the NBA or even MLB. So we will clash with other events. We will end up finding ourselves at crossroads with other major events. Like if I just type in events happening at the Los Angeles Convention Center, May 25th, just a general thing. You just go check it out. What's happening on May 25th? Oh, look, we've got the Pokemon Regional Championship. And we've got this also happening at the same time. Obviously, these convention centers are big enough to host a lot of these things, but we're going to be sharing with a lot of people a lot of the time. And that's just something we're going to have to get used to. And when you're doing travel for hotels and stuff like that, make friends, make people you trust to share a room with. But that's just my video. I think that this was a fun topic to talk about. I know that's a little bit different from my usual content, but I like talking about real life problems that we have to encounter with Pokemon rather than just complaining on social media. There is an answer to complaining. If you guys are looking to complain, go do it on social media. be my guest. But if you're looking for a solution or an answer as to why these things are happening, this is your answer, I guess, in a long-winded way. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this kind of content. I'm going to try to do more of this in the future. I just like to talk. So thanks for listening.